guys. We're here for Pharaoh but Sober, episode 21. We have today Shiloh Walker. Shiloh is really amazing person. I've recently linked up with him via the TikTok. I know I'm meeting a lot of my guests here on the TikTok lately because I've been doing good things over there, big things. So Shiloh is a really important part of my TikTok community. And the link is not sending. Hold on. Oh, it isn't. Okay, he got the link. Hi, Mary. I'm trying to make the boxes go away, and I don't know how. There we go. Okay. I sent him the link, so he should be coming any minute.
Hey, friend.
So I am so excited to have Shiloh here with us. Well, let me switch this around. Shiloh is, like I said, he's a very big part of my TikTok community. I said I know I'm meeting a lot of my guests here recently on TikTok because I'm just spending all my time there. But Shiloh's a good stuff. So I'll do a little introduction. Shiloh's been clean. I'm not sure how long he's been clean, but I know, stepped up and he raises his 4 kids by himself. And you have 4 kids or 5? 4, right?
5.
5. I heard Holly kept saying 5 earlier, and I thought in my head it was 4. So 5 kids that he raises all on his own. He's, obviously he's in recovery. He's very active in his church. He's very, very good stuff. So we're gonna let him tell his story. Start wherever it starts for you, Shiloh. Childhood, wherever your addiction starts, wherever you want the story to start, and then I'll just pop questions and we'll just go from there.
All right. Well, to be honest, I can't really recall a time when addiction wasn't a part of my life. It really started out like my dad was a drug dealer, so it started out. I can remember being little and finding his stashes and like little bowls with all these different things in them, and not knowing what they were, but knowing they weren't okay. And then my cousins, when I was like 7 years old, my cousins would always make me smoke weed with them so that I wouldn't tell on them. And I didn't even know what was going on, but um, you know, I grew up in a family where, that's just the way it was. So I was first introduced, my dad always had all these people around, even my older friends were always around. And so I did meth for my first time when I was 12 years old. And, so many people, I do have traumas, but so many people, talk about their traumas. And it started for me just, I did it because everybody else around was doing it and it got offered to me. And I loved it. Like I felt like a freaking superhero, and you could have been my worst enemy and I would have just been your, like we could have resolved everything because I just wanted to talk about everything. And, but it didn't take long for it to progress into far more than just something enjoyable or something that made me feel good. It became a real problem. By the time I was 14, I used intravenously for my first time. And that's when my problems really just started to come out. That's when I became involved, with the legal side of life, started doing time. So my addiction got to a point where I was robbing my school regularly. I was selling drugs at school. I would go and volunteer to work the concession stand because my dad had to deal with me by that point. He started teaching me when I was 14 how to cook. And so, for every gram that I sold, I got a quarter for free. And so, I was selling at school during school hours and everything, just to support my habit. And then I got the bright idea, I could start signing up to work the basketball games, the concession stands. And my buddy would come in, I would give him $1 and he would come in and buy nachos or whatever and give me $1 and I would give him change for a 20. And we
Yeah.
would do that all night long during the basketball games. And
I
so it
thought you
got
were
to
gonna
where
say you sold at the games. I was gonna say that's almost a perfect
no,
setup for that. You know what I mean? Like at the concession stand. That's where
no.
I thought you were going. But
We went far beyond that. So, I just learned that we ended up getting caught. And so I got banned from, working the concession stand. We kind of got caught, but, anyway, so, that's how we started supporting it. It got to the point to where, we would work the concession stands and do that all night. We would come out with, a couple $100. And so I would be able to just pay for everything that my dad had given me and not have to, sell any of it. Then we just got to do it, but I got out of control really, really fast, stopped going to school. So I had some family that worked at a youth ranch, and my aunt came and talked to me one day and really wanted me to come there and try and get my life together. And my dad was looking at sending me to, like, even though he had gotten me into that life, like I had gotten so out of control and I was so violent and crazy that even the alternative schools wouldn't accept me. I'd gotten expelled here from my middle school for selling pills. I got caught by my football coach of all people selling pills, and got expelled. And even the alternative schools wouldn't accept me. Nobody would take me. So my aunt came and talked to me, and they ended up getting me out to the youth ranch. And it was a great experience for a little while, but even though I agreed to go there, I've kind of felt abandoned. I only got to see my parents so much. And half the time, my dad didn't show up on visitations, um, and
so
so I got,
I hate to interrupt people when
yeah,
they're telling their story because
no,
I
I
don't
love
want to
it.
like throw you off your thought track. But like, so was your mom like not? Where was she at for all of this? Is she present just there or?
No. So that's another thing. When I was 1 or 3 years old, depending on who you ask, I've never gotten a sure answer. But my mom had me when I was a baby, and then her and my dad separated shortly after I was born. I don't know exactly when, but when I was like either 1 or 3, I'd gotten double walking pneumonia, and my mom couldn't handle it, and so she called my dad. She was in New Mexico, I think, and he was maybe in Arkansas. Or anyway, she called him and told him basically, like, I can't do this. You got to come get him. And so she was never a part of my life really growing up. There was one point when I was 10 years old. She had moved down here to be with me, but all she was doing was staying high and drunk the whole time she was here. So we got in a big fight one day, and I told her to leave, and I didn't ever want to see her again. And I didn't. I didn't talk to her. I didn't see her for 14 years. When I was 24, I gave her an opportunity to come back and be a part of my kid's life, her grandkids, and kind of the same scenario. She's staying drunk all the time, and she ended up leaving in the middle of the night. And so I was kind of just done with her. So I actually reunited with her when well, let me get back to where I was at though. But yeah, she was not in my life growing up. So at 14, I went to that youth ranch, and things were good for a while. And then God just really, I don't know what all I was going through, but it just felt like I had been abandoned by my dad. And, and that's part of the reason I am the way with my kids that I am now. But so I ended up, long story short, I ended up stabbing a kid when I was out there. He had told on me for stealing one of his toys, which I didn't do. I had just put it back in the wrong spot. And so when he came down the stairs, I, grabbed him at knife point, and I ended up stabbing him. And so I got to go do my first 13 months in juvenile prison then. Well, so when he told on me, I got freaking our house father, which is not something that should happen in a place like that. But our house dad, called me up there, and he ended up slapping me. And that was, that was just the tipping point for me. And so, I pulled the kid back to my room at knife point, and he ended up smarting off to me, and I stabbed him. It wasn't life threatening. It wasn't, I'm sure it was probably really traumatic to him, but, it wasn't like a major injury or anything. But I got
You
kicked
know,
out of there. Go ahead.
it sucks because like who the hell is that dude to be slapping you? And then like if he would have never done that, maybe. And yeah, like you were responsible for your own actions, but at the same time, you were a fucking kid, Like
Yeah.
that sucks. I
I
hate
was a
that.
kid, and I didn't even know what trauma was, but I was really, really traumatized,
For
from all the things that I had already seen and been around. And
I know, like, I also like, our stories are more similar than I even know. I started smoking at 9 with my brother and sister because same reason, so I didn't tell them. and meth was the same at 12. My mom, we moved out to Iowa, and she had some brothers out there that were, and she was giving it to me. And it's just, I know how that feels like, yeah, and I didn't know, like, I didn't even know it was, I mean, I guess I knew it kind of felt wrong, but like saying, like, I grew up and both of my parents always used, it was just very open in front of us. Like, I didn't even really know it was wrong, like, until I was already like addicted by the time I was like, this is not a good plan,
So to add to that, I can remember one time when I was probably 7 or 8 years old. We had one of those old vans that had like the carpet in it and the table and the curtains and all that, a shaggin' wagon. And I can remember being at some of my dad's people's, house, and him sending me out because he messed with real weight. And I can remember him sending me out there, telling me to go get him the 5-gallon bucket of cut out of the van. And like, I go out to the van and I didn't know what cut was. So I was looking for like knives or scissors or, whatever. And so my dad was a very angry person. He was very, very tough. And, I come back in and I didn't know. I was like, I can't find it, Dad. And so, he got mad and flipped out. But, I couldn't have been older than 8.
For
and he
not
sends me out
knowing
to
what
get
the hell to cut drug, like, to not know, like, yeah.
I had no clue what the hell cut was.
Yeah.
And
you shouldn't, like, you should not. It's not like you should have known that. Like,
yeah. But in his mind, I should have, I guess. But yeah, so I went to that youth ranch and stabbed that kid. And so then let me tell you, I've been in prison a lot of my life, in jail. Juvenile is the most violent time I've ever done in my life. Juvenile facilities are so violent. So I went and did 13 months at what's called a serious offenders program. And, while I was in there, my parents got busted here in our hometown cooking and got locked up. And fortunately, the cops messed up the search warrant. They kicked in the door before they had the search warrant. So after like a few months of being in jail, and they were reviewing everything, going to court, and they ended up letting them out. And so they moved to another town. So when I got out of that place, I went to live with my dad in this other town. And that was, I guess I was 16 at that point when I got out of there. And, right back into the same old lifestyle. He had moved towns, but not changed anything about the lifestyle, And so I got out and went, right back to the same old stuff. So I started getting in trouble with the law up there. And then I ended up, when I was 19, catching my first 2 delivery charges. And that's back when it was still a Class Y felony. So I was facing 10 to 40 or life. My lawyer ended up getting me 6.5 years with 3 years.
Where do you live? What did you just say?
Arkansas.
Oh my
So
God.
at that time,
it's so different. I've never heard of Class Y. Like, we have like what, A, B, C, D, I think.
So here you have A, B, C, D, but it starts, so D is the lowest, and then C, and then B, and then A, and then Class Y is like murder and rape and those kind of things. So back at that time, it was still a result of the war on drugs. Manufacture, delivery, and possession was the same. It was all wrapped in as one charge, and it was a Class Y felony, the same as rape and murder. But long story short, I ended up getting a 42-month sentence. I ended up doing 16 months of that. I did good the whole time I was in prison. When I went into prison, it was crazy because when they took me to my barracks, we had to go in through another barracks and between the CO's offices. But when I walked into 12 barracks, the first person I saw was my dad's best friend from when I was growing up. He was doing 30 years for manufacturing. And so his barracks was right next to ours, so we could go back and forth between barracks, so and he had already been there some years. And so, I clung to him and kind of just had him teach me the ropes and, how to act and what to do, how to conduct myself. And so I did 16 months on that. I didn't learn anything except how to become a better criminal. I did do, programs and stuff, but I didn't, I wasn't really worried about it. At that time, I was young and I loved to fight and I thought I was so tough. And, in some ways I was, but I was just still young and raw. So it's crazy. When you get out, they gave you, back then it was a $100 check they gave you when you get out, Yeah. And so my aunt picked me up and she had, new clothes for me and all that, had my cigarettes ready for me and all that stuff. And she took me, I've always had a thing for shoes. So she took me straight to the shoe store and bought me new shoes. And I came back to this town and visited with all my family. We had a little cookout. And then I went back to my dad's where I was going back to live at, where I paroled out to. I hadn't even seen my parole officer yet or anything, hadn't contacted him. And that afternoon, I had probably only been out like 6 or 7 hours. And my dad was like, you know, hey, didn't you say they gave you $100 when you got out? And I was like, yeah. And he's like, let me borrow 50 of it. And I was like, for what? You know, and he's like, don't worry about it. Just let me borrow it. And I was like, listen, dude, how about I just buy the dope and we'll do it together. So, I mean, fresh out just by a few hours and hadn't even seen my PO yet. And I'm doing a shot and, you know,
I remember getting out of jail one time. And I only did like, I don't know, a month or something, like no, just some little county time and for a probation violation. But like I went out and my dad, like, I don't know, like my uncle Denver picked me up and took me to my dad's house because that's the only place I had to go. And when I got there, like my dad was like, well, like, so you're not doing any drugs, like, you know what I mean? Just like, I don't know, like hinting around because he had some and he like, and I did. So I ended up, of course, I'm like, yeah, like what do you have? You know what I mean? And he
yeah,
had like,
bust it out.
yeah, like so he had some like some dope, some H. That's what we did, and then he had like some pain pills. So in my mind, I'm like, oh well, like I'll just do the pain pills because that was like better, I guess. But then by the end of the night, it didn't matter. Like yeah, so I can totally relate. Like yeah, he was just it's like tiptoeing around too because he like I don't know like and my dad like I know my dad loved me but he also failed me, you know, like in many ways, and it's hard for me. That's a lot of why I don't share my story because I love my dad, like in so many ways was a really good guy, but he just wasn't that good of a dad, I guess. And you know, I don't know, but so and I can't say that he was a good dad. I don't know. I struggle with how I feel about it, but yeah, but
I can
because
really relate to that.
yeah, like because I like my dad, he really was a good man. Like and so, like I had a boy on this podcast here recently who you know, as horrendous as my growing up was, my dad like rescued him. He came and lived with us, you know, so like he when he was on here and he was like talking about my dad like he was a hero, and I was like, man, and that, you know, and that's how I like to remember my dad. But then when I tell these stories, I'm like, oh, you know.
Yeah. I go through those same kind of feelings. So you know, my dad was my hero, my best friend. You know, there were times when he was in and out because at times he drove a truck that was a cover to go to California and get their loads of you know stuff. But um it wasn't until I started my journey in recovery that, you know, it hit me that my dad wasn't the hero I thought he was. It doesn't mean I love him any less.
Right.
I just look at him different now. But I also use those failures that I see from him as motivation for me to not repeat those same mistakes. So I got out of prison the first time in 2007. I went back in either 08 or 09 for a parole violation. And then again, so the first time was in 08. And then, you know, I just had to do a short bid then, a few months, and I got out. And then the next summer, I got busted again. I was my wife so I had met this girl and basically got her pregnant right off the bat. So as soon as I found out she was pregnant, I was living in my dad's house. I went and rented an apartment, and I had gotten pulled in from a buddy of mine. We were going back and forth to Dallas, you know, getting pounds and pounds of weed and bringing it back. And so, you know, my dad, I'm trying to figure out where I'm at here. So she's pregnant with my son. My dad passed away in March 1st of that year, and he was taking us to all of our doctor's appointments. This is my first kid, you know. So when she was 7.5 months pregnant, we got busted. We got set up, but we came back and dropped off 4 pounds with somebody, and I tried to leave. We had a pound left to split between the two of us, and I tried to leave it where we were at because I had ran a decoy car down there and with no tags on it, and we were following the car that had everything in it. That way, if the cops tried to get behind us, like I would, you know, get pulled over before them. So when we get back, we drop theirs off to them, and I was trying to leave it all there and come back. I was gonna go put my tags on my car, get some sleep, and come back, you know, the next morning and get our stuff. But my partner just wouldn't do it, and so we ended up putting it under the hood and taking it with us. We got busted down the road. My wife was 7.5 months pregnant. I was 6 months from getting off parole. So I caught that parole violation and I ended up taking the charge for everybody. So they got let out. I went and did my little parole violation, but while I was in there, my son was born and I missed his birth by like 6 weeks. And so that was my last trip to prison. He's the only one of my 5 kids that I wasn't there for the birth of. And the ironic part to that too is he's the only kid out of all my 5 kids that somebody other than the doctor cut the umbilical cord on. So I have 5 kids. I was there for the birth of 4 of them, but I never got that experience. Which is he was born in a different hospital. They were all born in one. He was born in a different one, and my best friend's wife cut his umbilical cord, but I never got to experience that. But that was my last trip to prison. I've been to jail, quite a few times since then, but I've never been back to prison. Praise God. But I want to focus more, on the recovery side. So, my kids grew up in my addiction. All their lives, it's just been crazy stuff. Me always selling drugs and not being a parent to them. And thank the Lord, I had a whole theft ring going here. The last one, the one that got me busted and got me set on the right path, was a $40,000 theft. So what happened? The cops had come one night. The people found out that had heard that we had their stuff. They drive by and I had some of their stuff out in sight. So they went to the cops. So that night, they came with the cops and they were knocking on my door, and like I was not answering the door for anything. So they searched all our stuff outside and took some things, and he left me a note on the door. Long story short, the next day I knew they were coming back with a search warrant. So I got up. Oh, I missed the whole part of that story too. So I went to jail on a probation violation at one point for 2 weeks. Okay. And it was just because I had absconded, but I didn't get in any trouble for that whole 2 years I was absconded. So they just reinstated my probation. But during that 2 weeks, my youngest 2 kids' mom, who I had been with for 9 years, had been cheating on me. And she thought I was going to be in jail a lot longer than I was. And she moved another guy into our house. So when I got out of jail, I didn't have anywhere to take my older 3 kids. Like, we had been at that house for 5 years, So we all lived together for like 5 months, and it was crazy. It broke me down mentally. Oh, you're on mute.
Were your older kids there when she moved this dude into the house? Like,
Yeah.
God. And then you just got out and she was like, "Oh, bye," with your kids?
No, so like she had come and visit me, and I asked her during the visit, I just knew, and I was like, is there somebody else? And she played it off. She's like, oh, well, I messed with somebody else, but I'm not anymore, and I'm like, listen, I can't be mad at you, you know what I'm saying? Like, I should have been there, I can't be mad about that. So I got out after the 2 weeks under the impression that, everything was just fine. And this dude she had been having him there since 3 days after I got locked up. But anyway, I get out of jail and I didn't have anywhere so she took care of my kids that whole time, and had him there. And well, I won't say she took care of them, because when I got out, she was gone to another town and all my kids were in bed, but she had been gone all day and all night, and my kids.
And how old were they?
Let's see. That was 3.5 years ago. So the oldest one was like 12, and so when
and they're alone in the middle of the night.
Yeah, I got them. So I was supposed to get out at 7 a.m, but I got them to let me out, because I had gotten sentenced to days to serve out my fines. They reinstated my probation, but I had fines, and they sentenced me to days to sit those out. So legally, my time was up at midnight. They don't like to let you out till 7 because that's when the new staff comes on and all that. But I had talked them into letting me out at midnight. I've done a lot of time in this jail, and I had relationships with everybody, not good, but just like I knew all these people. So anyway, I talked them into letting me out at midnight.
Time you learn, you got to kind of get buddies with the COs and stuff on a certain level, because they control your fucking life, man. Yeah, to an extent. Like, you can't, you got to be cool with them. Like, respect, respect each other. You respect them. They usually respect you. You sometimes have the assholes, but
So we had respect for each other because I've always had that like leadership mentality. So I would kind of, help keep everybody in line and not acting crazy. And we got, seconds during our meals. And, there were benefits we got from not being crazy. So, and I was always a leader that was kind of, help bring people in and let them know, like, this is how we act. This is what we do. And if you mess it up, you mess up those seconds we get at dinner, like there will be repercussions.
Yeah.
So anyway, you build those relationships. So I got him to let me out at midnight instead of 7 o'clock. And when I got home, she was gone. And I do look, I have my mind set, like I was not going to smoke cigarettes. I was going to because I had told her, I was like, you've never had a good version of me, just like, just give me another chance to get out and be there. So I was not going to get high. I was not going to smoke anything. And when I get home and she's gone and I wake the kids up, and I ended up using somebody's phone to call her. And she told me, she's like, okay, well, look, I'm going to be back in a little bit, but he's with me. And, so that I just completely flipped out. I smoked a cigarette, and then I ended up finding a bong in the room that had a little bit of stuff in it. And I got high. And so by the time they got back, like, all I had on my mind was beating this dude, and I did. And then she threatened to call the cops, so I ran off. But we ended up, long story short, living together for like 5 months, all 5 of us.
Did he know like that you were gonna be there when he just like came back there with you there?
Yeah. And so apparently he had told one of my friends while I was in jail, and one of my friends was like, dude, Shiloh's gonna beat the shit out of you when he comes home. And he was like, look, this is all my shit now, like this is all my stuff. This used to be his, but it's mine now. And it kind of did. So it drove me crazy because like I beat him down that first night. And then, she threatened to call the cops. I ran off, but it was a real crazy struggle for 5 months of, I came to terms with it over time, but like I would have to go to bed at night. Like my daughter was sleeping in the living room, and I've always like sang to her before bed and prayed with her. And so I would go in the living room, and lay her down and sing to her and pray with her. But I would have to see this guy go to my bedroom and sleep with, in my mind, my girl, and living my life, and it drove me like insane. So
Yeah.
I can't tell you how many times we tore the house up, fighting in front of my kids. And but then we started kind of getting along, and we started doing crime together, doing some thefts and all this, and we ended up getting busted. So I knew the night when the cops came the first time, I knew they were coming back the next day with a search warrant. So I got up the next morning. He got up and went to work. I got up and got all my stuff together and got out of the house. I went to my neighbor's house, and I told my baby mama she needed to get her stuff and not be there because they would be there eventually with a search warrant. And she didn't listen to me. So they came, they searched the house. I'm watching all this unfold out the window. She got arrested. We wouldn't answer the door, so they didn't get me. But I told my kids, I was like, listen, if something happens and I'm not here this afternoon when you get out of school, somebody will be here to take care of you. But my kids have been through this system their whole lives. So when the cops couldn't find me, they went to the school to ask my kids where they were at. And they told them, rather than telling them, that he said he'll be there or somebody will be there to take care of me, my kids just said, I don't know where he's at. And so DHS stepped in and took him, which, that God knows what it takes. That's the only thing that could have gotten me clean. The only thing. Going back to prison wouldn't have fazed me. Nothing but losing my kids and knowing I'm the only person that can be there for them. So when DHS took them, though, I thought the cops and DHS worked together. So I did not contact DHS for the 2 weeks that I hid out in that house. And, I didn't contact them at all because I thought that if I tried to see my kids, they would have me arrested. And so I just made up my mind. I was broken and hopeless. And during all this period, my ex had bonded out and the boyfriend had bonded out. And so I hadn't gotten caught yet. So they were moving their stuff out and moving everything. We had gotten the same day at the same time the cops came to raid our house, they brought our landlord too with an eviction notice. And so we had so much time to get out, well, they were moving their stuff out and I gave them all the things I've been saving for my kids. My intention was to take my life in that house because I'd lost everything. I mean, I didn't see a way out. And I had called some rehabs and everywhere I called didn't have a bed or I didn't have the right insurance. My PO, the day I went to rehab was the day I was supposed to see my PO, and I had felony warrants. I mean, I was going to jail and back to prison, no doubt about it. So 2 days before I went to rehab, I just, finally came to the end of my rope, and I used a perfectly good rope and tried to unalive myself, and the rope broke. And even at that time, like, I could not see that that was God protecting me. All I thought was like, wow, I failed at something else. Like, I can't even kill myself. I don't know if I can say that on here. I can't even succeed at doing that. Um, so I got a better rope. I got a nylon rope, and I had like this whole thing screwed to my ceiling to the rafters so that it would hold me up. And some people that weren't really even friends of mine came by to check on me, and they took the noose down, and they were gonna take me the next morning to donate plasma to get a little money. And the next day was D-Day. Like, I had to go see my PO when I was getting locked up, and anyway, I got a little bit of dope from them, and they left, so they'd be back in the morning to get me. Well, the next I did is God protecting me again. I couldn't find my syringes, so I ended up just smoking it, and I went to sleep. Because when they left, like, I seen the noose still laying there on the floor. They had took it down, but they just left it there. So I was like, "You fucking idiots!" So my plan was for them to come back the next morning and find me, and I couldn't find my stuff, so I smoked it, and I fell asleep. And they came back the next morning to get me to go donate plasma. Well, he had been at this rehab previous to this, and he had gotten kicked out. But he was like, "Look, dude, before we go donate plasma, call this number, and if he can, this man will help you." I called the number, and to this rehab, and they told me to be there at 12:30, bring my stuff just in case. But it was just a intake. And so, look, I went ahead and loaded my clothes and my guitar in their car. And they had to go. They went ahead and went and donated plasma. I stayed behind, and so I was at the neighbor's house smoking, like, getting as high as I could, before I went. But I knew I was going regardless. And when they showed up to get me finally, like, I think I probably burned holes in my friend's bed sheets, because when they honked that horn, like, I threw the pipe on the bed and I took off and I ran and jumped in that car, and I went to rehab. And so when I did my interview, they asked me if I had any warrants, and I told them, no, of course, to get in. And then once I got in, they asked me that day, what I wanted to achieve out of it all. And I was like, man, I told them the whole story. I said, I just want to be somebody my kids can be proud of again. And so they let me in. I waited like 3 days. They give you 3 days to lay up and not do anything, and just like get used to being there or whatever. Well, I didn't take that. I just jumped in from day one. It was a faith-based rehab, and I just gave it all to God from day one. And so after like 3 days, I told them I had warrants, and they just, we made arrangements, and I went and turned myself in, and the judge OR'd me the next day right back out to the facility. And so when I went to the rehab, the day I went, like, I had this whole mountain in front of me, like Mount Everest. My kids, I haven't seen them. I don't know where they're at or what's going on with them. I have all these felony charges, like, I know I'm going back to prison. I just had a whole mountain of obstacles in front of me, but I went there, and from day one, I started giving it all to God. And within 2 weeks, all those obstacles were just gone. So I had turned myself into the jail. I got released the next day back to the rehab. Made contact with DHS and started getting visits with my kids. The rehab helped me get a job, and so I had a good job. It was just crazy how fast everything fell in line when I didn't have anybody to rely on but God, and so I gave it all to Him. And so I'll tell you, I've seen through this whole thing that, you can ask God to move a mountain, and He might give you a shovel, but every scoop you take, He's going to add 3 or 4 to it. And so everything that I did was just being magnified and magnified. I ended up getting kicked out of the rehab over some minute stuff. So they make you get food stamps while you're there, and you have to give them the card. But my kids were still, my youngest 2 didn't get taken, only my oldest 3. My youngest 2 got to go be with family, and then when their mom got out, they stayed with her. But they were living in a trap house, like a really bad place. And so when I was getting to go home every Saturday and visit those 2 for 8 hours. And then on Fridays, I got to go, and it took like 6 hours to round up my kids that were in foster care and get us all together. And we got 4-hour visits. But so my youngest 2 were in a really bad house. And so when I got my food stamp card, instead of turning it in like I was supposed to, I went and bought them groceries. And that was 2 out of 3. They gave me 2 strikes for that. It was a 3-strike program. My 3rd strike was actually just for not wanting to sit in the front row of the church we were going to go to, because I still had like a social anxiety, and I threw a little fit over it. Nothing bad, didn't fight anybody, but anyway, I got kicked out of that rehab, and I just sat there all day. I couldn't get anybody to come get me. Everybody was at work, and I cried, and I just felt I didn't want to come back here to the town I've done all my dirty in all my life. I had plans to stay in the other town and start a new life with my kids. And then I got kicked out, so that, I just didn't have that option. But I sat there all day and cried, and I was already scheduled to come to this recovery program here and give my testimony. And so, I just got in my mind that day, and that like 6 hours I had to sit there before they finally just brought me home, that I can go back and I can be a light for other people. And so I got out on Sunday. Tuesday, I was in the recovery meeting here and telling my testimony. And these people I've known for a long time. I went to recovery there a few years ago when I got busted, and it was like a court mandated thing. So they started planting seeds in me years ago, and loving on me. And so I got kicked out of rehab. I ended up in here telling my testimony, and these people just loved me so much that I just stuck with it. I started going to every meeting, and then I've helped, build. Now I'm on the board of directors for our recovery here, and I'm working on starting a program in the jails that I've done all this time in, and I'm a peers. But it all stems from the recovery groups that I found, that just kind of like you guys, like they love me through everything. Let me show you guys these right here. These are my chips. So I don't have my 1-year chip here anymore because I gave it to somebody else when we didn't have any in the meeting. But I want you guys to know something. Like, recovery is not a gift. Recovery is something that you have to earn. Okay, it's not something freely, we freely give the experience and the advice that we have learned, but every one of these chips right here represents a sacrifice that I made. These represent cravings that I chose not to act on. These represent hard times that I've gone through when I chose to just face my fears and not get high. Every one of these. So this is 1 day up to 9 months right here. And then this is my 1-year special coin, and it's a Phoenix. It has a serenity prayer on the back, and on the front it says, "Out of the ashes of addiction, recovery and growth." And, I just want everybody to know, you guys know how I come, and I'm real and honest about things, but recovery doesn't just make life great. It makes life worth living again. I can tell you that. Oh, I'm gonna get emotional, you guys. I'm just so thankful. I fought DHS for 10 months. For like the first 6 months, like I fought them and I cussed them because I didn't like the fact that they would sit in these visits and tell me what I could and couldn't say to my kids. I've always been an open and honest person with my kids, and like I wanted them to know the steps I was taking and what I was doing. And so I had a lot of my visits canceled, but I didn't give up. And eventually I learned how to play their game and just to focus on my kids and not having to tell them what I'm doing. And so I never failed a drug test. I never.
Get the Phoenix coin, people.
So my recovery mentor, the lady, she ordered this for me special. You can order them off Google, Amazon, whatever. But she ordered this for me. That's why I was willing to give up my 1-year glow in the dark coin to somebody in a meeting one night. But this was they had like a whole, because listen, I was a bad dude in this whole county for a long time. And so, I was the addict that everybody wrote off, even my best friends, that I would never come out of it. I can't tell you guys how lost I was and how broken I was. I still go through really tough times, but I'm able to face them now. And I'm just thankful to be here, and be able to stay sober. So one of the rewards, so recovery is not a gift, but you do get a lot of gifts that come from it. And, I got custody of my kids back after 10 months. And I'm not bragging, you guys. I'm proud and I'm thankful. But they said I was the first single dad they had ever seen get his kids back here. So now the lady that took my kids is actually my kids are on a special kind of insurance. And she is actually our insurance worker now. And to this day, she said, like, she was a caseworker for 2 years. And out of that whole 2 years, I'm the only parent of all the kids she took that got their kid back. I mentor people now, but my full 180 moment was when I got invited maybe a year ago or so to go to a big conference in Little Rock and speak to the DHS supervisors and lawyers. And so, you know, when they invited me, I've done a lot of public speaking already, but when they invited me, I thought it was going to be like,
huge.
yeah, but I'm like, there's only so many counties in Perry, you know, in Arkansas. So, you know, it's not going to be that many people. I took my oldest daughter with me. Listen, it was like 350 people in this room. And one of them, though, was the lawyer that represented DHS against me in the case. And she came up to me afterwards, you know, and was just telling me how proud she was. But that was like my full 180 moment when you go from cussing these ladies out and fighting with them and having meetings canceled and just hating them. And I said it. I've got videos. My daughter videoed the whole time when I was speaking, you know, and I told him, I was like, look, you know, a lot of people hate you guys, but y'all, you know, I'm so thankful that y'all took my kids because that's what it took to turn my life around. Nothing else would have been able to do it. And so now, you know, I'm 3.5 years clean. I'm in peer support. I'm freaking just, I live and breathe recovery. And my whole life has just become, you know, wanting to show people that there is hope and there is a way out. And I've been through so many different aspects. You know, addiction has touched my life in so many ways. I've lost a lot of people I love, I've lost a lot of my life to it. I'm thankful I'm still alive, period, because I literally was that close, you know, that rope should not have broke. And so now, you know, I believe that God saved my life to give me a chance to go back and help other people. And so I dedicate my life to God in recovery. And this is everything for me.
I love that. I just love the whole story like that. It's so true. Like, it really is like people don't usually get their kids back, especially not people that struggle with addiction. It's hard. I know.
Yeah.
I mean, like for me, my kid was everything. Like I had my oldest daughter, I was in prison, shackled to the bed, the whole thing. Thank you. And just like that was when I knew I couldn't do, and I got out and I got her back too. It was crazy. Like I got out on October 2nd or October 22nd, December 5th. I was stood in court and got all my rights back. There was a whole situation behind a whole bunch of stuff, like with the foster mom and some craziness. But like it was God just stepped right in. And that's when you start talking about the rope breaking too, I'm gonna talk about that. Like there's no other explanation. Because I felt it come over me. I felt the coaches. I teared up like like it's crazy. And then to think like, you know, he has a plan for you. You're good stuff. I love hearing you speak. You always give like the good words in the like your kids, like the way you are with your kids, like it's just really amazing to see a parent, I don't know, break the cycle, I guess. Cause you know, you like me, we grew up, like I said, I never even realized that it was like wrong for just stuff to be on the coffee table or like whatever, you know, I always knew like, don't touch it, you know, while I was really little and stuff. And it was just like, it was normal. It was common, no big deal. And so like for our kids to never, you know, not have to be the, you know, like I know your kids did experience a little bit of the addiction of you, but like they don't never have to know that person again. You know what I mean? Like never again.
Yeah, they lived my addiction, so I make sure that they stay included in my recovery as well. You know, growing up without parents, you know, my dad raised me, but he was in and out, so I was back and forth between him and my grandparents. But those things are what motivate me to be, you know, and I'm still not a perfect parent. Do not mistake that. You know, I have anger issues still that I'm working through. I still have things I'm working through. I'm far from perfect. You know the struggles I have recently been going through with my daughter, which by the way, you know, praise God, that's all going great now too. But I'm not a perfect parent, but I can honestly and truly say here and tell you that I am a very present parent. I may not ever get the dad thing right, but I'm never going to stop trying because I'm going to be the person that I didn't have growing up. You know, if I would have had, so I'm very strict on my kids, you know, but I just really feel like I wouldn't change anything looking back, you know, because it all built me into who I am now. But if I would have had the guidance as a teenager that I'm trying to give my kids now, I wouldn't have, you know, I wouldn't have gone through all that.
I say
So
all the time, I'm sorry. I say all the time,
No,
like,
you're
I
good.
wish my dad or mom would have just like found me wherever I was and whipped my ass all the way home. You know what I mean? But like in reality,
Yeah.
they just were the ones like they probably gave me a ride or whatever, like whatever. But it's yeah, and I believe I tell that's why I tell my daughter all the time, like you can be mad at me if you want because I like that's fine. That's fine. My parents never made me be mad at them, and like I wish they would
Yeah.
have.
I say the exact thing. Look, I sit down and have those talks with my kids. I'm like, when I make these decisions that they don't like, I sit down and explain to them why, like you have such a bright future. And look, I know as well as anybody from that, when I poke that kid, or to the selling drug, all it takes is one bad decision, one bad choice to throw away the rest of your life. But what you were saying earlier, about all these things running our family and we didn't realize they were wrong. That's one of my favorite terms that I've learned or sayings, is generational curses ran in my family until they ran into me. Like it stops right here, you
Yes.
know. And so, I have those talks with my kids and explain to them why I'm making these choices. Like you think I'm being an asshole or whatever, but like I'm trying to protect you and give you the future that I didn't have.
Yeah.
And it's raw, like I keep it really raw with my kids and honest. I admit to them, like I might not be making the right choice, but I'm making the choice that I think is going to be best for
Right.
us.
That I
You
think is
know?
right. Like, it may not be right, but I am legitimately doing what I think is right. And that's all we
Yeah.
can do as parents. Nobody's perfect and we don't have all the answers. These they didn't come with a manual. You know what I mean? Like I
Mm-mm.
wish I lost mine got lost somewhere if they did because I never did get one. And I
Yeah.
needed one a couple of times, believe that. And so
They forgot to give me mine too. Don't worry.
so I was, I just think you're so amazing, and I didn't realize how like how alike our stories were. Oh, I know what I was gonna say. When you talked about your kids getting taken by DCS, and you were like you thanked them, and like in the end, like in the law. Now, of course, not in the moment, but like in like looking back now, you're like, I know that's what like God did that on purpose, and that had to happen. And I love that you said that because I say the same. Like my sister has a couple kids and family members took them and she got to see them and be in their lives and she never got them back,
Yeah.
never even attempted, never did the thing. When I had my daughter in prison and she went to foster care and I'll be
Yeah.
damned. You know what I mean? And I was like,
Yeah.
and so I get it like 100%. I was like, nope. And I've always had the thought in my head that like if she would have went with family, like then where would I be today? Because
Yeah.
if I had
You
access to
can't say
my
you would.
kids,
You can't say for sure you would still be out there in your mess, but you have to think you probably would because, you know, like my kids don't have their mom has been out, my oldest three, the ones that got taken, their mom's been out of their life for 12 years. There was nobody willing to step in and take them. And so for them to end up separated across all parts of the state, like it just really motivated me. So once I finally got things going and got in touch with DHS, on our way to the first visit with my kids, I told the caseworker, I was like, look, I will never fail a drug test. I'll do whatever I have to do, but I'm getting my kids back. And she tried telling me, like, oh, well, it worries me to hear you say that because relapse is part of recovery. Now, I will say I did end up having one lapse, but I told her, I was like, it doesn't have to be, that's a choice you make regardless of what the circumstances are. Like I have circumstances surrounding my lapse, but I made that choice. I made
I
the
hate
choice
that
to
she
go
said
and
that
get
to you.
huh?
I
Yeah,
hate that she said that to you. We had this debate, like in our live, we talked about it. And like while I do think that relapse can be a part of recovery and it is for a lot of people, I don't think you go around saying that to newcomers. Like I
yeah,
think it can be very misleading. And you could have very easily in an addict's mind could have been like, oh, well, she pretty much just gave me permission to fail. Maybe I could fail one because she said
yeah.
she said that, like. And so I'm just so glad, but shame on her for saying that.
Yeah, but I'm very hard headed, and so I use that for motivation,
Yeah.
And I was like, look, I'm not messing up. I'm not going to prolong this, and I didn't. I got my kids back in 10 months. And even getting kicked out of rehab, and all those things. Like I had to stay with my aunt and my cousin for a few months to save money, but I got my house right. I don't know, in early December. I finally rented a house, and that's where I say God magnified everything I asked for, because I prayed and I was telling them, I was like, I just need a 1 or 2 bedroom, and I'll sleep in the floor, or I'll sleep in the living room on the couch. I ended up getting a 4-bedroom house for a super good price, here. And our first night when I got that house, my youngest two came first, and our first night in that house was Christmas Eve of 2023. And then it was like March when I got my kids back full time. Oh, here come one of them now. What's up?
Safe to say I'm not a pro at Fortnite.
Okay, baby, I'm still on this podcast until we're done. Love you.
About 10 more minutes. Yeah.
Say hi.
Hi, baby. No, not
Hi.
a face. There we go. Hi, sweetie. You're so
Hi.
pretty.
Thank you.
She gets that from me.
I don't like how your phone's like mirrored, Dad.
So, okay,
Okay.
all right, go on.
Okay.
I love you.
I love it. Love the kids. I had something else I was going to say, and I've lost it. But you just, it's really. Oh, I know. I do know what I was going to say. We hear all the time that people always say like, I always heard growing up, like once a kid gets in the system, you don't ever get him back and blah, blah, blah. And like growing up, I said that, like I've said it a million times in my life, but now like after my kid was in the system, that's bullshit. Like now I'm not saying that there's never like corrupt caseworkers that do bad stuff, because I'm sure there are. I'm sure there are cases where people get done wrong. But at the end of the day, most of the time, these people really do want to put you back with your kids, and that if you do what you're supposed to do, you know what I mean? And so you're just, I love that you did beat these. And I hate that the statistics are so low. Like you were like, oh, they said no one else did it. And that's why people say that. So like, it is a valid statement for people to say, not valid, but like it is, I understand like why people say that, but like having gone through it, like, and maybe like I say all the time, I got really blessed, like with the caseworkers and things that I worked with. Like I really did. They were really good to me. But at the end of the day, like I did the work. I got a job. I got my license back. I got a house. I stayed clean and all the things. And like, all I did was do what they said. Like they just listed out, they're like, this is what you got to do, A, B, C. And I just did it. Like,
they made it really hard for me. So like, it looked easy maybe to people from the outside, but I did all the work, but they did not make it easy, at all. But I can say I've developed really good. But here's something I want to say too, though. Like when I spoke at that conference, and I have the video of it, I posted parts of it, but that's why now I advocate, and I'm trying to get changes in my state for peer support workers to come alongside parents who have lost their kids. Because when you lose your kids, all the resources, and rightly so, I agree with it totally, but the resources are all geared towards the kids. And they don't give any resources for the parents, And so I'm advocating for change in my state right now, for them to open up positions working at DHS, for somebody like me to be able to work with the parents who have lost their kids and help show them the way and what they need to do and get them the resources they need to be. If you want the parents to, that's a trauma, losing your kids. Most of us are already using to deal with trauma. And so when you take my kids, you're just adding more trauma to my life, and then you're not giving me any resources. How can you expect me to be successful? Like I was, and I'm not bragging at all, but I was a rare case because I was just motivated. But that's why most parents don't get it, because they don't get any help. They just get more trauma thrown at them, and then all these rules, and it's overwhelming. And so I want to be the person to be able to work with those people and help show them the way and guide them and help them be successful, because you can. Anybody out there, if you've lost your kids, you can get them back, but you have to be willing to put the work in.
Yes,
and you have to be willing to follow rules that you think are freaking stupid.
Yes, that's the thing right there. You have to I wrote down in here that somewhere you said somewhere along the line you learned how to play DCS game or DH, whatever it's called, their game.
You have to play their game.
And you have to, you really have to. And I think that's a great idea, what you said about the resources, because to piggyback off that, I know when I first got out of prison and my daughter was still in foster care, at the very first, I got a job right away. I got super lucky, and my parole officer got me a job I did drywall for 3.5 years, where I wanted my kid back. You know what I mean? I was doing what I hung drywall. Yeah. But anyways, so, but I couldn't find a place to live. And so I remember calling my parole officer, and I was like, man, I've put in everyone keeps denying me because I was fresh out of prison on some felonies and some dumb shit, So, and I was like, so do you have do you have a list of apartments that rent to felons or she was like, no, we don't have that. She said, if you were using, we could get you into a sober living, but because I had never failed a drug test, they would not help me. And I was like, are you fucking serious?
That's crazy.
Yeah, real life. So I really love that you said that, because it is really, I mean, like, I guess now, like, now hearing you say that, like, I just was really determined, like, 'cause like I did, I went and did drywall for 3.5, like, we packed, delivered our own drywall. He didn't have it delivered. Like, we unloaded the trucks by ourselves, all the shit. Like, it was really crazy just to have a job. I mean, it was a good time. I really loved it, but I was just really motivated. But I do remember that specifically, like, saying, like, hey, can you help me find a place? And she was like, no, you've never failed a drug test. Like, you don't, you know, at this point, you don't have a drug problem. And like, no. I was like,
That's wild.
yeah.
But, you know, that's where, as peer support workers, we are, you know, we're called to be the change agent. So, you know, those things, you know, I want to be the person to manufacture those changes. And so, you know, I got to meet the director of DHS in our state, and we've had those conversations, and we're still having them. You know, it comes down to grant work, you know, getting grants, but we can be the ones to help change the system. And then I want to be a part of that, because it's a very broken system.
Yeah. And I love that you are like, not only are you sitting here, it's easy to sit here and say, like, I want to make these changes, but you're like, I've met with this person and I've done this. And I'm like, you're taking steps to implement them, because, you know, a lot of people, we like to sit and, you know, as humans, we complain, right? We like to sit around and complain about things, but you're actually making steps to be part of the solution. And I really admire that. That's big stuff.
Thank you. I'm trying. It's a process for sure. Like, I don't feel like I've made any progress yet, but we've at least had the conversations, and so, you know, at least I know that my voice is being heard, even if we're not seeing the change yet.
Yeah, and sometimes stuff like that takes time. Like, in my experience, and I've not had a lot of it, but in my experience and opinion, and that things like that, like, sometimes it seems like they're not going anywhere, and then they just happen, because it's like someone has to sign a paper, and it has to be like, but once it's approved, like, whatever happens, it's go time, and then it'll just, like, we'll be full speed ahead.
Yes, ma'am.
We hope anyway, right?
Yeah, pray. Just pray, you know. We're trying.
All right,
these kids deserve it, you know.
Yes, they really do, because kids deserve to be with their parents, man. Like, I hate when, you know, I don't know, I hate it. But we've been on for an hour, so I want to thank you so much for being on here and stepping in. I love you so much, and like I said, Shiloh has been such a big part of my TikTok little community that we're growing over there, and he's always there showing his support, and I love him with the kids and all the stuff that he does. He always comes in and advocates and speaks to the men when they come in, and all the stuff, and you're a big part of us, and I just really thank you.
Thank you. I love you so much. I'm so grateful for the opportunity.
Yes, thank you, Shiloh. I love you.
Love you.
I really feel it's my time, think it's my year, yeah. I really feel it's my time, think it's my year, yeah. I really feel it's my time, think it's my year, yeah. I really feel it's my time, think it's my year.